Welcome to the Speaking Podcast. You can find all our episodes on speakingpodcast.com. We're also on BitChute and YouTube. You find the links in the podcast description. I'm also a podcasting coach because I've got 4 other podcasts: The Awakening, The Meditation, The Learn Polish, and The Crypto. And you'll find everything on bio.link/podcaster. Today, my guest, she's actually International Women's Conference speaker, author of several books, founder of Crown of Beauty International, and of course, more important to me, she's a podcaster as well. Please welcome Sue Corl.
Thank you so much, Roy. I'm very excited to be here with you.
So, I've looked at the different things you've done. You've spoken in so many countries, but I always like to know the person's journey from when they're younger to actually getting into speaking.
Oh, great. Thank you. Yeah, my journey has a lot to do with why I speak. I was born with a very, very severe cleft palate. And so I had no nose, no upper palate, no upper lip. And so it created a lot of struggles and difficulties in my childhood. I had 26 surgeries over 15 years. But of course, the hardest part was when I started school. And I had a lot of teasing going on from kids. And it really impacted my sense of identity. And I began to believe all these lies I would hear every day that, you're ugly, you're no good, no one could love you. Now, I had a wonderful mother who would tell me the opposite, but when you hear that every day from your peers, it really impacts you. But as the years went on, as I got older, it did impact me in my earlier years, in my 20s. I think it created a lot of fear in me, I think, of men. But at the same time, I was working in youth work in Hawaii, and I had a lot of opportunities to speak, especially to women. And I enjoyed it a lot, but it wasn't like my main profession. It was kind of a combination of a lot of things, of counseling, of speaking, of small groups, and doing also some ESL work with international students. But after that, in my 30s, I moved over to China. And I think that's where a lot of the transformation in me began, where my faith really had an impact on me, and seeing how my creator sees me as beautiful, as valuable, as important, as created in his image, that I can share that with others. And I realized all those things I was believing were not true. And what was really true of me is that I have great worth and value. Beautiful. God has endowed me with many things to give to other people. And so I began to share that message, Roy, with other, especially women, but also men. And it was having tremendous transformation and impact in others for them to have that confidence, and compassion for others. And so it made a huge difference. So that's kind of been my journey.
Excellent. And I've seen bullying in school when I grew up, and I know it goes on a lot. And it's the teachers could stop that immediately. And I don't know, I think the whole system is orchestrated to just allow that to go on. And with my eldest daughter, she didn't experience any kind of bullying, but I know that during my years, I was in the 70s in school, and it was terrible, everyone. And I know that goes on internationally, but I know that if I was a teacher, I could stop that immediately, and they can bring in systems to stop it immediately. And unfortunately, I think it's all orchestrated.
Yeah, it's a good point. I remember first grade was really rough on me, so bad actually that my mother did call the school, and they fired the woman. I didn't know why. I just came home and I said, "Hey, Mom, great news. I have a new teacher and she's really nice." So when I went into second grade, my mother talked to the teacher. We had just moved. And she did what you said. She prepped the whole class. She explained everything the day before I got there. Mom brought me a day late, like the second day of school. And the kids were wonderful to me. It made a big difference. But then going into third grade, I guess Mom thought that would carry over, but it didn't, because you have all new kids, new teacher, and just what you said, she did nothing, and yeah, it's terrible. That's why When I had kids, started having children in school, the second that I'd hear bullying, boom, I was there at the school dealing with it, and I put a stop to it. You're right, Roy.
And like, I mean, 26 operations. I've had a few operations, and I know, they're not, I mean, especially from a young age, that must have been tough.
Yeah, that's where I'd say my mother played a big role. She was always there for me. She was a pediatric nurse. And so the hospital, it was the same hospital where she worked. They basically paid her to take care of me. In other words, they gave her full salary, but she never saw it. It just went towards the bills. But it meant that she could be with me, not 24/7. Back then, you couldn't stay overnight, but she would be there till, from 6 in the morning till 8 at night. She's very dedicated, because a lot of times I'd be there for at least a month and sometimes longer. So it definitely shaped me. But I want to say, Roy, I would say that's had a really great impact, positive impact on my speaking, which ironically, by the way, I had 11 years of speech therapy. The doctors thought that I would never speak and properly and never be able to eat normally and could not function in society. Well, we proved them wrong. And I think it's brought into my speaking, which is, I was listening to a lot of your podcasts and seeing what edge people brought and to help all of us as speakers. And I want to add, one of them did talk about vulnerability, but I think vulnerability and compassion are really experienced by the audience when it's in the speaker. And the result is that people connect with their heart, not just their head. And when we connect with our heart, not just our head, it brings transformation into our lives.
Excellent. So I mean, you've got amazing speaking experience, but you might kind of take me on the journey for that, how it kind of began and what you kind of learned as you went along.
Yeah, thank you. Well, like I said, I was living in China, and my job at that time was like a coaching job. And so I traveled around the country and I met with women who were leaders, and I would coach them. And in the process of doing that, a lot of them at first were internationals. They were foreigners. We call them expats, right? You're an expat, I suppose. So I would speak to them, and the vast majority, I would say 90%, were just about to pack up their suitcases and leave most of the time. It was just hard for them. And what was happening is, when we move into a new culture, a new place, and there's a lot of challenges in that, just like a new job or getting married or becoming a mom or a dad, that kind of transition, or going from marriage to singlehood. So the transitions are rough. And what that can bring out in us is a lot of, I want to say, deeply buried things that traumas or difficulties, or if you want to call them lies from our past, things that were said or done that were hard, that we just stuff down in our heart. And then when we get into those challenging times, they just begin to surface and even erupt. And so I found that even though I was going there to coach these people in their jobs, I ended up coaching them a lot about their heart, about their emotions, about the struggles, and finding that the root behind a lot of their relationship problems or problems at work was more to do with how they viewed themselves, that even went back to childhood. So I, of course, could relate to that. And as I shared my own story, and I shared how God helped me get through that, to really see myself as an image bearer and a valuable, important, beautiful, competent person, and begin to point out in them some of the lies that they didn't even realize they were believing. You would hear it as they're speaking. They would have these phrases, and I'd say, do you realize that you just said 3 times, I don't think I can keep going. I don't think I can do it. I don't have what it takes. And then talk about their full potential, who they really are, that they would get free from that. And so after doing that over and over and over and seeing tremendous change in people's lives, I thought, wow, I should do this as a conference. So I put on a conference in my city and had 90 women come, and it was tremendously received. I received a lot of positive responses. So people started booking me and ended up all over the country. And Roy, I got in the mail a picture from a little child that said, "Thank you for changing my mom." And it had a picture of a child holding mommy's hand with a big smile. I would get comments from husbands saying, "Thank you so much," because my wife is a different woman. And so I think that's sort of how it got launched. And after I was traveling all over China doing this, which was a little challenging because I do it often, I did it within faith communities, and that's not really very allowed in China. If you're a foreigner, I should say. But anyway, we did it because it would be a one-up, so it was okay. But it's tremendously helpful. Then I started being asked to other places, but it became difficult living in China, getting visas, the internet being hacked into or shut down, that kind of thing. So we moved back to the US. Plus, my kids were starting college and they had never lived in America. And so we wanted them to have a little support while they're in college and transitioning into experiencing American culture. So we came back, and because of that, Roy, I've been able to expand much more internationally into several nations, find translators, marketing, the whole thing. It's been helpful.
Yeah, excellent. And I know obviously China, but you spoke in Japan, Korea, Lebanon, UK, you kind of loads more, obviously, in all the different parts of the
Right. A
US.
lot of Asia, many Asian countries.
So, because some people, they kind of aspire to do that. What have you learned to kind of take on board when you're going into some of these countries?
I have learned to be a learner, to go into a culture as a servant, to go into a culture with humility, not feeling like, oh, I have something to bring you that will change you, but rather, how can I serve you? Not how can I cram my ideas down on you? And also just being very observant of the culture, appreciating the culture, being adventurous with the culture. So if they're serving grasshoppers, I'll eat the grasshoppers. I may not eat a lot of them. They laugh, right? I'll just say, okay, I'll try one, But if it's not a grasshopper, usually I can do more. But also just experiencing and saying, I love your culture. I'd love to learn more, asking a lot of questions. A lot of times when you get there, you have a long drive, from the airport to the hotel. Sometimes in some countries, really long drives from one place to another might be 9 hours. And my assistant says, wow, you ask a lot of questions, but it's great because by the time I get there, one of the questions I always ask is, what are the real needs of the people that I'm going to speak to? Where are they hurting? What are their struggles? What would encourage them? So just trying to get in touch with what's going on in their culture and then adapt what I'm saying to that culture. As well as I always begin with usually a joke, but not a did you hear the one, but more about a positive thing about their culture. Like I'm so excited I get to try a grasshopper today. I had no idea that you actually pull off the legs and all those things, and how do you cook a grasshopper? So I'm looking forward to finding out something like that. And they're just cracking up laughing, right? And right away, it kind of bonds you. It lets them know that you approve. You're not going, oh, that kind of thing. But then I share my story, which is really what I wanted to communicate here today, that I really feel to be a good speaker, that you should speak from your passion, things that you really believe in deep in your heart that have made a difference in your life, and share with vulnerability. Yes, you can be confident, you can show competence, you should definitely show compassion and care, but be vulnerable about either what was lacking in your life that now this product I'm going to share with you made a difference for me, or these principles that I'm going to share were life changing for me. So that vulnerability draws people right in. And so even though I'm up in the hill tribes with the Karen people in Thailand, 8 hours up on a jeep through the dirt, mud up the mountain, and you stand in front of them and they look at this white woman, and they right away, I know they're thinking, what does this American know about me? She's one of those rich Americans. But immediately I share my story, the one that I shared with you. And that time I shared it more from my mother's perspective and what she went through, and hanging in there with me through all that, as well as myself, what I went through. And right away, you just see their faces change, and they're like, oh my goodness, yeah, I think I want to hear this. I think she can help me. There, she gets it, even though obviously their struggles. And again, I had 8 hour drive to find out about it, but it's amazing all over the world that what you go through, Roy, is a lot of the same things that I go through emotionally, even though it looks very different.
No, I love that you're actually connecting with the locals to find out. Anytime I go to these events, most of them stay in these high fancy spa areas. I don't. I
Mm,
like to stay where the locals are, go, have the
yeah.
food and just talk to them, and you learn so much more. And I always have a way better time. I mean, all the other people do is complain, oh, it costs so much for this and so much for that. And it's like I'm connecting with the locals. And I think it's a very important thing. And I love the way you do that, that you're actually finding out the joke as well. It's a great way of connecting with people. That's brilliant. So
Yeah,
with
the
the
only challenging thing is sleep for me, because sometimes you're sleeping on a board or whatever. So I learned the secret is take sleeping pills when I travel with me. And if the bed's challenging, then I'll be okay.
brilliant. So I know your kind of conferences are like 1 to 3 days. So I just kind of, when you're doing stuff, how you structure yourself, what way you actually, especially if it's 3 days, how would you structure that?
Yeah, I love when they're willing to do 3 days, because it gives them time to process. It gives them time to bond with each other and have fun, right? We'll put that in there. And it also, we can make ourselves, I always bring a team, Roy, even if it's only one person, but sometimes it's more than one. It might be, I just went to Lebanon and there were 8 of us. And so when we had those break times, like there was one scheduled time to go to the pool, because these women, a lot of them were Syrian refugees, and they'd never in a long time, some obviously have been wealthy at one point, but they'd lost everything. And so even though they were employed by this company now, they had a really rough life. And so I raise all the funds. I don't charge anything. And so we were able to go to what you were saying, that fancy place. We took them purposefully to that fancy place to really spoil them. So when we went out to the pool, the 8 of us were just available. So the result was, one group was playing with these cards, a certain game, others were getting that one-on-one counseling time or prayer time. A lot of women talked to me about their jobs and how to improve, what they were doing. So that was a great time. It was, and very special for them to get that connection time with each other, right? But then we had plenty of teaching time. But after the teaching time, we had both small groups with the ladies that I brought. Of course, we had to have translators. They provided somebody in each group. And they had alone time that I would give them some questions to process and think about. So I love those longer conferences, but typically in the US, unfortunately, you're lucky if you can get 7 hours. I don't usually go less than that. I am willing to do a one talk, but it's sad for me because I know there's so much more they can get out of it.
Brilliant. And just, it's fantastic actually helping the refugees. But I don't think most people know the way it's done, because I had friends that were actually helping as well. And sometimes people are in refugee camps from when they're a child, born,
Yes.
even born for up to they're 17. And the whole lot is actually orchestrated. The whole system's orchestrated. Even in Ireland, they have kind of like emergency accommodation thing, and they're put into a hotel. Like, you can't have a normal life grown up in this.
Right.
And like, I think the more that we kind of expose that as well, that's how we'll stop it, because it's like it's a business. Basically, they're funding the actual hoteliers, and I don't know what way it's done in some other countries, but in Ireland it's actually it's an evil business the way that it's orchestrated. But
Mhm.
I love people that actually use their voice and help others, and I commend you on that.
Yeah, and you know what's been good is now I'm helping a lot of Afghans in Philadelphia, and I'm so much more effective in doing that because I lived overseas. I showed up in a country, I didn't speak the language, I didn't have a big support group. I had to leave my family to do that. I was still single. And there were a lot of challenges, but the locals were wonderful to me and really reached out. And so being here now in America, I want to do the same for them. And having worked with refugees overseas has helped me also to understand when they talk to me about a refugee camp. I'm like, oh, not that I've had to go through that. I'm not going to be, I don't know what that word is, like insensitive, basically, to say, oh, I know what you mean. I'm not going to say that, but I'm going to say, yeah, I'm so sorry. I know I was in a refugee camp in Lebanon and in Thailand, and I know it's really rough. I'm sorry for what you had to go through. Of course, I don't go to the Afghans and say, so tell me all about what you went through, because it's trauma,
Yeah.
but I'm here for them if that's at a time that they really want to open up and share that. Otherwise, what I'm doing is helping them with English, helping get their kids in school, helping them find a house to live in, more of those kind of needs.
Excellent. And I seen you do a 12-week course. Is it, am I right that you've that in 7 languages, or is it the books that are in 7 languages?
Well, the book is, but it is a course in itself, and our conferences as well in 7 languages. So, and we're working on more. I go to Uganda, there's 32 languages there. So it's really challenging. So what we do is bring in women who are leaders, and so they do speak English, so they've been trained, and then we give them the material and we just tell them you're going to need to translate this yourself into your language. But a lot of their women are illiterate, so it's an oral type of training, and that's fine. We've tried to get some of those put into the different African Ugandan languages, but yeah, it's rough. A lot of them aren't able to, people don't realize how hard it is to be a translator. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, yeah.
And you can just go in, oh, you speak Lugandan. Can you translate this? Oh, sure. It's not that easy. So sometimes it's hard to find a translator for the written language.
Yeah. So you've several books, so I don't know exactly how many, but you might tell me what they are, what they're about.
Oh, sure. So our one is called, that's in so many languages, is called Crown of Beauty, 12-week Bible study. It is a study both from using scriptures, but also helping us to really work through things in our own heart, our own life, as well as in our faith. So that's our most popular one. I have 3 that are like daily, we call it devotionals, daily encouragement, little nuggets. I take a lot of stories. I'm a storyteller, but a lot of stories from my life and relate that to our everyday life. So those are fun and pretty easy to write. I am currently working on a new one called, well, I don't know, publishers change the names, but potentially, or at least the topic is thriving, not just surviving. And it walks through using a tremendous leader that's not talked about much in the Bible, Nehemiah, where he rebuilt the walls of Jerusalem. But there are incredible leadership principles in there, but also just how he encouraged people, how he was able to take a people who felt defeated, worthless, useless, I can't change a thing, and gave them a vision. And that's what I want to instill in people, that vision that my life can change from just surviving to actually thriving. And I use a lot of my own stories and principles in that as well.
Excellent. And your podcast, then you might tell me a bit about that.
Sure. So I started a year ago. It's called His Heartbeat with Sue Corl. I do have a lot of guests come on, and it's helping women. We have men listen too, and sometimes I gear some things more with men for men, but helping them to deal with struggles that they encounter with themselves, with others, with their faith, so that they can really live a very, I want to call it even a victorious life, a really successful life. So just helping them in all these different areas. So we try to have variety where 1 week we're talking about relationships. It might be parenting, it might be in marriage, it might be with my friendships, it might be with my co-workers. The next week we're talking about faith, different aspects of that. The next week we're talking about ourselves and how we can become more confident and fulfilled.
Excellent. And what host do you with? Because I'm curious of that with all the different, because I'm coaching on the podcasting and I look at all the different platforms, just wondering what platform you actually use for your podcast.
Yeah, so we have, I'm going through Buzzsprout, is that, and then they put me on pretty much everything, Spotify and Amazon, and it's not called iTunes. What's it called?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, the
It
iTunes
is. Okay.
podcast.
Yeah, all those. Yeah, I haven't gotten into video yet. I'm so busy, honestly.
Well, I mean, with all what you're
You know,
doing, I can totally understand.
my assistant, who is amazing, when we went to Lebanon, she stayed. And she's working there, and I fully support that. So now I need a new assistant, but I do have a volunteer group of 8 women, but they're moms, a lot of them, and all of them. My assistant was single, so I need a new single assistant who can help me. So I've had to learn a lot, coming back in 2016 to the US after living overseas for 25 years. It was a big shift. And one of the biggest shifts is social media. Everything's social media. When you're overseas, everything is relationship, everything is connection. I was connected with one couple that literally kept me busy, constantly traveling to every province around the country in China. So it's not like that here. We're not that connected unless you get on social media. So
And I
doesn't
think
matter how
that's a
old you
kind of
guys are.
fake, the social media. We think we're connecting and we're giving comments, but the reality is nothing beats meeting people face to face.
Yeah, that's the truth. Yeah, I miss that. I miss being in a country that's more community oriented, I must say.
Yeah.
But I'm getting to know my neighbors, and it's wonderful. I have a lot of dear friends here. But
And on the social media, just finally, because you're doing so much with the books and even the podcast and the speaking. So which ones you find serve you best?
I really like Instagram. I don't know why. I'm on Facebook, but it can overwhelm me almost. Instagram becomes more focused, I guess, and intimate to me. So I don't know why that is, but I enjoy that a lot. We have a website. It's crownofbeautyinternational.com. And on that, I post weekly blogs, and people can, connect to my email through that. I enjoy that a lot. I love, with a website, you can do anything with it, right? You can put videos, you can just do a lot. You can go right to it, crownofbeautyinternational.com, and get right onto our podcast. You can get right to our resources. So I love that. You can, like here, I can say, oh, I'm going to have a freebie or whatever you want to call it, right? I have this resource that'll help you. Go to my website and just click on more. It's actually under more, and you can find that. So yeah, I love to go that route.
Yeah, excellent. So listen, thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. So I know you've mentioned the website. Is there other social media or any other links that you want to give? I mean, obviously I'll include it both in the audio and the video for the listeners.
Right. Yeah. I think that's good. That's what I would say. Just go onto our website and you can find everything, our Instagram, our Facebook. Just type in there Crown of Beauty International and you should be able to find us.
Okay, excellent. Okay. Thank you very much, Sue.
You're welcome.
So that's all for the Speaking Podcast. You'll find all our episodes on speakingpodcast.com. As mentioned, we're on BitChute and YouTube, and you'll find everything about me on bio.link/podcaster. Sure to give us a thumbs up, 5-star rating. It really, really helps. Share with your friends, and also give Sue a 5-star rating as well on her podcast, because she'll appreciate it. Until next week, take care.